Hey class, we're going to jump into chapter 8, which is sports psychology. Just let me get that going. Or exercise psychology, I should say. We're not dealing with sports specifically. Good amount of definitions here. Again, a lot of this is going to be the why or the how, and the benefits of exercise, how it affects us from a mental standpoint, which then can affect our physical performance as well. So just keep that in mind. A good amount of definitions, but I think very important stuff for us to understand. If you like psychology, which I do, I love this stuff. So again, we're going to dive right in and hopefully you enjoy it as much as I do. So benefit number 1, stress reduction. We probably have heard this before with exercise, that it can help relieve stress, or it's a stress releaser, right? So it can relieve both state, which is short-term, and trait, which means long-term anxiety. Again, relief leads to maintaining participation. So they feel better and they connect feeling better with exercise. So then the client wants to continue exercising because it makes them feel better. Even though exercise is hard, right? There's something beneficial from it. Reduced anxiety, lower intensity, higher volume versus high intensity. So again, depending on where the clientele is at, if you go lower intensity for higher amounts of volume, that might help reduce your anxiety, right? Physical or mental anxiety as we kind of go through that. But again, you find what works for your client. The potential cause of this, so there's rhythmic movement, right? If you think about running or cycling, an exercise movement, right? Down, up. So you get in this flow, right? So there's a little more consistency with it, where life tends to be like jerky sometimes, especially if you have anxiety. So that might be a potential reason. I think there's also the biological reasons or the physiological reasons, which we'll look at in a second. Again, greater left frontal cortex activation versus right frontal. Again, each part of your brain has a different function. So we see those, and science has really helped us kind of explain why exercise is so good for us. It's also got antidepressive effects. Appears to be as effective as medication in men and women experiencing clinical depression. Exercise as much as the antidepressants that we're on. That's phenomenal. Plus all the other gains you get from exercise, right? Muscle building, increased basal metabolic rate, all those sorts of things. So why not do it, right? So how does this work? They release of biogenic amines in the brain, serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine. You might have heard of these before, or the point of these, whether you take them or not, or enhance them. So exercise does this for us, right? You also get a social interaction aspect. You're talking to a personal trainer. You're talking to people at the gym. There's a sense of accomplishment, self-efficacy, which we'll look at in a little bit, sense of independence, especially for older populations, right? Being able to get up and down, off the floor, get out of bed without someone helping you, keeping that independence, right, can do a tremendous amount for us. And then just life satisfaction. You can do more. You enjoy more of life. Like, why wouldn't that be antidepressive? So again, huge benefits to exercise from a mental standpoint. From the cognitive benefits, so cognition is memory, analytical thinking, planning, focus, concentration, decision-making type of stuff. Exercises appear to function more effectively as well. If you look at, I'm big on looking at like successful people or entrepreneurs or business owners. Tim Ferriss is a big one. Those guys and those gals, what they do, one of the most consistent things when people ask, what do you do, is exercise. Right? They're doing yoga, they're doing resistance training, they're going for runs, they're cycling, those types of things. And is there a correlation? I don't know for sure, but it seems to really link up a lot of these people that have high functioning mental acuity. Older populations, especially going to be beneficial to them, right? Because again, we already talked about the decline that happens after 30, right? So let's delay that as much as possible. And what we noticed, there was a study done, and I think it's in your book, older exercising men and sedentary college-age men were either close, or the old men did better on cognition tests. So think about that. Older men, so senior citizens versus college kids, which are still in their prime of their life, exercise helped keep them up to par. So why wouldn't you want that going forward in life? How does this work? It decreases the decline of blood flow, which essentially means that it keeps blood flowing to the brain, right? Increased heart rate, blood vessels dilate, higher oxygen content, getting more nutrients to the tissue, okay? Increases the expression of genes that code for neurotropic factors. These are things that make you feel good, right? That are beneficial to the brain, nourish the brain tissue. And then cognitive reserve, so resistance to age-related decline, so things like dementia, or Alzheimer's, right? If you have those genes or you don't, this seems to help protect against that, right? And the last thing we'd want, and it's heartbreaking, is to see people start to lose their minds in the sense of their cognition. So APOE, this is the genetic factor for Alzheimer's. So you can actually get tested for this and see if you have both or if you have one. So non-carriers, again, their odds when they're sedentary or when they are active, right, is generally the same. But look at if you are a carrier for it, look at that odds ratio, right? So it goes down, right? It decreases, right, with those odds of active versus sedentary, okay? So again, we want to decrease those as much as possible, and exercise can help do that. So now goal setting. So now if you're talking to a client, or this might even be for yourself, how do I goal set? And again, this is in your book. The other thing I'm going to recommend, which is an incredible book if you haven't read it, is called Atomic Habits by James Clear. I think it's a huge help if you're able to get a hold of it. It kind of challenges the goal setting aspect and looks more at habit building, where goals kind of, you set them and they go away once you meet them. Habits stay long-term, but I think they go hand in hand. So again, we'll talk about goal setting now, but again, if you have the ability, Atomic Habits by James Clear is a great book. So what are goals? It's a strategic approach to behavioral change by which progressive standards of success are set. Again, identify what the client truly wants. It's not about you. It's not about you wanting them to lose weight. They may not want to lose weight, right? Or they may want to just be, again, thinner. They may want to fit into a wedding dress. They may want to look good for beach season or to impress a girl or a guy, or you facilitate that discussion, but they're the ones you got to get that goal to. The why is what I call it, right? You might be talking to someone who's a potential client and you go, why do what do you want to do with me? I want to lose weight. Why do you want to lose weight? I want to feel more confident. Why do you want to feel more confident? I want to start to impressing people and have more confidence. Why do you want to impress people? Who do you want to impress? So you're asking questions to get to the root goal. And then once you have that, and once the person recognizes it, it's really hard to break it. And so you're going to get a commitment level that you haven't gotten before. You might have heard this before, SMART goals. So SMART goals are specific, they are measurable, they are action-oriented, they are realistic, and they are time-bound, right? So this idea, so someone says they want to lose weight. An example of that would be, okay, let's set a goal for losing 20 pounds. So it's specific, 20, it's measurable in pounds on a scale, action-oriented. So it's going to take exercise and accountability and food tracking and things like that. Realistic, depending on how long, right, I would say, and time bound. So let's say it's January and by, summer, so May, end of May or June, so 6 months. So in 6 months, I want to lose 20 pounds. That could be realistic, and you also have your time bound. So you've hit all those goals, and you're not just up in the ether of losing weight, right? We can specifically look at how our goal is going as we're tracking it. Some definitions just to understand. So you have feedback, which is the knowledge of results, right? So that would be the strength you do, or if someone steps on the scale and you're going, hey, we're down from 200 to 198. It's like you've lost 2 pounds. That's feedback. A long-term goal, you provide meaningful pursuit for the client, right? So that would be your end goal. So we just talked about that. So 20 pounds by the start of summer. And then you have short-term goals, which provide strategy to achieve the long-term goal. So you might even within that 20 pounds by the end of summer or beginning of summer, you might say, okay, the goal is a pound a week, right? Or 2 pounds a week. And that'll be your short-term goal. And if you lose 20 pounds or 2 pounds a week, right, over, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, you're going to hit that loss, right? And it may not be perfect, but again, that gives you short-term goals to look at, right? And again, think staircase, all these short-term goals lead to that long-term goal. If you only looked at the long-term goal and didn't care about anything in between, it can get really disheartening. Right? If I'm trying to lose 20 pounds, but I only see in a month, if I don't understand the short-term goal, and I'm like, I've only lost 4, right? Then you don't see that success, or you may not feel the full effect of that success, but having those short-term goals established can really help with that. A couple types of different goals, okay? Process goals. So the clients have a high degree of control over these, right? Effort would be an example of one of those, right? I want to put in more effort. I want to be at the gym more often, things like that. Then you have outcome goals. right? This is what the client has a little less control over. Something like, I want to be the strongest lifter at the gym, right? That would be an outcome goal, right? I want to win a competition. Well, you don't know what the other people are doing to prepare for that competition, right? But you can do the best on your side. Okay. Less probability of success on that. Where a process goal is, I want to work out for an hour every day, right? Client has pretty much control over that hour, right? Getting in that work for an hour. So just understand kind of the difference between those two. And then your performance, right? It's in between this relation of personal control. For example, I want to improve my 1 RM in bench and squat. So it's only worried about the individual. It's an outcome goal, but it's also, it might be out of their control because there are so many factors in that. So it's kind of this in between. So again, process is just effort. Performance would be, I want my bench press to go up 100 pounds, right? That is a performance goal. What can help is diversifying your goal setting. So don't have all your goals be process, right? Have some be process, maybe some be outcome, some be performance-based, right? So one might be the outcome goal will start at the end is like win a bodybuilding competition. Okay, let's say you have a client that wants to be a bodybuilder. So little control, but basically, how do I get myself to prepare for the outcome of that? I might set performance goals where it's like, okay, I need to be at this % body fat. I need to be at, I would like to be at these max rep or these 1 repetition maxes, right? How do I do those performance goals? I need to go to the gym, 4, 5, 6 days a week and be there for 45 minutes at least, right? So there you have process, you have performance, and you have outcome. And so you mix those in and you're able to accomplish a lot of short-term goals while also getting to those long-term goals as well. A little bit of motivation. So the definition of that, psychological construct that arouses and directs behavior, right? We talk about it a lot in sports. We talk about being motivated. Sometimes people only want to exercise when they're motivated. And the tricky part is exercising when you're not motivated. Again, it's a construct, right? Which means it's kind of up in the ether. It's an internal drive. It must be inferred from observation, right? So if someone tells me I'm ready to work out 4 days a week and they only show up 2, I can look at that, observe that, and be like, I don't know if you're motivated enough, right? The actions don't match the words, right? Or if someone does show up 4 days a week and they are working hard and they're pushing, I can go, man, that person is motivated to accomplish their goals. 2 components of it, again, time and commitment, right? And the intensity that you go on. So you can judge off of those things, like I just said. Reinforcement and punishment. Now, we might hear these, you might have heard these, you might use these in other forms. We are going to talk about the specifics of it, just so you understand that you're using the terminology well, because you are going to be personal trainers, hopefully, and you're going to be in conversations. I want you to understand them accordingly. So reinforcement is something you want to do where you increase the likelihood of a behavior, right? You increase the likelihood. Punishment, you want, when you do a punishment, you decrease the likelihood of the behavior. Okay, so again, reinforcement, think of giving a dog a treat when they do something right. Punishment, no treat or something like that. Okay. Now you have with reinforcement, you have both positive and negative, okay? Positive reinforcement, you are giving something to the client in response to that behavior. So not only you're reinforcing, right? So it's something we want to continue doing, right? It intends to increase the probability, something like verbal approval, right? Hey, I love the effort you gave in on that set, right? Verbal approval, you are giving something. That is positive reinforcement. Negative reinforcement, what people might get confused on is you still intend to increase the probability of that behavior because it's reinforcement. Negative doesn't mean that you don't want that behavior reinforced, right? But what it does mean is that you're taking something away because of the behavior, right? So maybe you don't have to, maybe you're like, hey, I'll clean up your mat, right? You worked really hard, I'll wipe down your bench, okay? Negative reinforcement, so less work for the client, is the hope is that it increases the likelihood of their behavior to work hard. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys. Both of these are used to increase the behavior. One gives something, one takes away something. Punishment is going to be the opposite, right? In the sense that punishment, again, is a behavior we don't want to happen. So a positive punishment, as weird as that sounds, the presentation of something aversive, right? Disapproval, critique on a technique, right? Physical punishment is one that a lot of coaches will use on athletes, right? I'm not a huge fan of it, but right, if you do something wrong, right? Poor behavior, you're going to suffer the consequences, right? Go run a mile, go do something else, right? Negative is the removal of something, right? So I had something called the 3-strike rule. So what that meant for my athletes was you could only miss 2 training sessions each semester. If you missed a third, you were done for the semester. So 3 strikes and you're out. So it was the removal of the opportunity to train. And the hope of that removal, or the fear of that removal, was to change the behavior so I would have higher attendance. So again, both of these, positive and negative, looking to change the behavior, but one you are giving something as a punishment, one you are taking away as a punishment. The self-determination theory, a client is participating for his or her own fulfillment, okay? Not the expectations of others. A lot of times you can start off as a client, or even yourself as an individual, you're doing it for other people, right? I'm doing it for my mom. I'm doing it for my siblings or my children. At some point, though, self-determination is you're doing it for yourself, okay? This is both intrinsic and extrinsic. So intrinsic would be inside, extrinsic would be outside. If it's truly intrinsic, it's just you love exercise. You love the challenge. You love the stimulus. You love the benefits. The extrinsic is the desire for an external reward, right? That could be affirmation from your significant other, right? That could be compliments from friends, winning a competition, right? An award, something like that. So both can play into the self-determination theory. And it works on a continuum, and you can read about these more in your textbook. But A motivation would be, so not motivated, all the way to integrated regulation, where it is integrated into your system, right? It is a part of that self-determination theory. And there's everything in between that continuum. In stages of readiness, so working from basically not ready to very ready, right? So think about this when you're talking about your clients. You might get a scenario on the test where they explain, when you look at the definitions, they'll be like, Bob is or feels this way. What stage of readiness do you think he's in, right? So understand kind of the key concepts of each stage. So pre-contemplation. So there's no intention or thought to increase physical activity, right? I'm not contemplating it. It's before contemplation. Then you start contemplating it. Intends to increase physical activity, but not currently. So this might be someone in December who's going, I think I'm going to start going to the gym when New Year's happens, right? They haven't started, but they're thinking about increasing their physical activity. Then you have preparation. So then they're engaged in some activity, maybe 1 day a week, right? But not most days. So it's not consistent, or it's not the majority, right? So they start going January, and they're going, every Wednesday because they get out of work early that day or something like that. Then you have action, and these are specific numbers. So greater than 30 minutes of moderate intensity exercise, 5 or more days a week, and it's been less than 6 months. So now it's March, April. Our guy who said he was going to start working in January, now he's working out for 45 minutes. He goes 5 days a week, but it's only been 6 months or less than 6 months. Then you have maintenance, basically 45 minutes or more than 30 minutes, more than 5 days a week, five or more days a week, but now it's 6 months. Now it feels like the established habit has been made, okay? So that would be that now it's June, July, August. We're in maybe even in the next year, and this is the consistent stage that he's in. So again, understanding where someone's at, notice the key characteristics of each of these stages. Self-efficacy, confidence in your own ability, his or her own ability, right? Having that self-efficacy. We talked about how exercise can help build that up, right? The more you can accomplish physically, right? Moving a weight or getting a workout done or hitting a certain mileage or time or whatever, builds that self-efficacy. And the goals with that, right? The client is confident in their ability to complete the task regardless of the temporary failures, right? Let's say, you built up an exercise routine, and then you're like, hey, we're going to test. We're going to do a 5-rep max. And they only get 4 reps, right? They can't get the 5th. That failure doesn't negate all their belief in themselves, because they've built up so much persistence and effort and success to get to that point. So they're like, hey, I'm going to hit it next week, right? Or I'm going to be ready for it, in 2 months or whatever it is. So you're building that self-efficacy, the long-term investment. Again, what influences it? Performance accomplishments, right? Accomplishing those things that we set forth. Modeling effects, verbal persuasion, right? Conversation, right? Building up, Being it, you as a personal trainer, we see this all the time, the hype up that they do, right? You're building that self-efficacy. You can do it. You are capable. You will be capable, right? Those types of things are powerful motivators. And then arousal or anxiety, right? Arousal. So high level of arousal, and then anxiety. You want this balance that's called the inverted U, where there's this perfect level of arousal and anxiety. You don't want to be fully anxious and not aroused, but you also don't want full arousal. And so if you think about an inverted U, it's kind of this peak between arousal and anxiety, kind of finding that perfect number for that person. And keeping that is going to keep that person there, going to build their belief in themselves, and then the performance is going to follow. So how can we motivate? How do we motivate ourselves? How do we motivate our clients? Minimize procrastination, right? So don't let procrastination be something. Remove that frozen state, that in between. Identifying the false beliefs, right? The necessity to severely restrict food. We already talked about that. You don't need to do that. There are other means to do that. There are wiser ways to approach nutrition. Again, lifting weights will get me too bulky. Not a true belief, right? There is stages to this. So breaking down those walls for people so they can be motivated if food was their issue, or the fear of being too bulky was an issue, right? Being confident in breaking down those walls or those discrepancies. Identifying and modifying self-talk, right? Positive terms, right? So something that I learned in sports psychology as a football player, I would always think, I was played running back. And so I'd hold on to the football and I would tell myself, don't fumble, don't fumble, don't fumble, which means lose the ball. And then I was starting to read and it was like, instead of thinking about what not to do, all I'm thinking about is that thing, instead of the positive, which is hold on to the football, right? Hold on to the football. So then I focus on holding on to the football instead of fumbling. Okay. So stick with positive terms in that do's versus don'ts, right? You can even go into mental imagery, right? Relaxation exercises, visualization. If they're going for a max, right? Visualizing the morning of, the night before, them moving the weight tends to, in their head, imagining them moving this new weight, this heavier weight, helps them actually physically perform it because the brain believes that they can do it, right? And that's a huge benefit. So things like that, relaxation, breathing techniques, all these things go in hand in enhancing this motivation. This is a video. Maybe I'll play it for you guys. I'll see how long it is, or I'll play a bit of it. Again, in the PowerPoint separate of this, you have access to this. And so if it's long, I'll just play it for a little bit. Otherwise, you guys can watch it on your own. Yeah, so this is 18 minutes. So I'm actually gonna have you guys watch this on your own. But otherwise, again, so that's sports psych. Again, hugely beneficial, right? So we went from all the way from what's happening in the muscles. Now we're looking at how do we affect the mind to benefit the muscles, benefit the body, right? So again, it's a lot to cover, but hopefully this was beneficial. And as we keep moving on, hopefully you guys are loving this aspect, and I'll see you guys soon.